Hello, tea lovers! Welcome to Rebecca's Tea Cozy, where we share our love of tea and other things that are cozy to nourish our bodies and our souls. With the anticipation of summer coming, I thought it would be fun to do a series on iced teas instead of hot teas. Now, iced teas are super easy to make, and there's actually several different methods that you can use. On today's episode, we're going to focus on one of the ways that is most common to everyone, which is the hot brewed method to make iced tea. Great tasting iced tea begins with great tasting tea. And we talked on the very first episode of Let's Talk Tea about how to brew the perfect cup of tea. And we're going to use a lot of that information to help us make a great tasting iced tea. One of the most important things is that great tasting tea needs quality tea. Now, we talked about using loose leaf tea over tea bags, and the same applies to iced tea, but of course you'll use what's on hand. We also talked about looking at the quality of leaf and how that can help you determine whether or not the tea that you have is of a high quality. When selecting the tea that you're going to use, you do want it to have a good flavor, but it might not be your highest quality of tea. You might want to save those for those special occasions for tea time. However, you do want to use a tea that's going to taste good from the get-go because that will impart the flavor that's going to be in your iced tea. The other thing that we talked about that's important is using a good flavored water. So whether that's from your tap, whether that is filtered, whether that's a spring water that you use, you want to make sure that the water that you use has a good flavor as well, because again, that water is going to impart flavor into your tea. Although black tea is the most common tea that you'll find in iced teas, you can use any of the 6 types of tea that we've talked about, and if you're unfamiliar what all 6 of those are, you can watch a prior episode on those types of teas. And in addition, you can use herbs, flowers, spices, or any combination of those things to make a delicious iced tea. Sometimes people get excited when they go into a cafe and they see some fancy green tea flavored with raspberry and strawberry, but it's just as simple to make those things at home. And across this series, we're going to be talking about some simple ways to do some of those more popular or exotic type beverages. Now, on today's episode, we are going to make iced tea from a black tea breakfast blend because that is the most common, but you can apply these same principles or the same process to any of the types of teas. I'm going to go grab the supplies that we need, and then we'll get started on hot brewing iced tea. When you're making your iced tea, first you have to decide what quantity of iced tea you want, whether you want a single serving, enough to make 2 cups, so just a little bit of iced tea, or whether you want to make a larger pitcher, such as a half gallon. Now, as a side note, one of the things that I love about the ball jars, and if you've seen prior episodes, you see that I use them a lot, as well as even behind me for storage, is no matter what size jar, the same lid fits on all the sizes and even down to a half pint. So it makes it really convenient without having an entire cabinet filled with all different sizes of lids and containers. So, great tip. For today's purposes, we're going to be making a quart of iced tea, which would equal 4 cups. Now, when you're measuring out your tea, you're going to use the same recommended ratios as if you were making a hot cup of tea. So for black tea, such as the breakfast blend that I'm making for today's episode, it's just a basic standard black tea. We're going to use 1 teaspoon per cup, 8-ounce cup. And if you are using tea bags, you would use 1 tea bag per 8-ounce cup. Now, as you get into larger sizes, because you are making so much tea, you can actually use slightly less. So if this were 8 cups of tea, then instead of using 8 tea bags, you could maybe use 6 tea bags. And instead of using 8 teaspoons of tea, you could maybe use 6 teaspoons of tea and just steep a little bit longer. You will want to pay attention to the directions on your packaging because, again, if you've got a large loose leaf tea, then a lot of times you're going to use more than a teaspoon per 8-ounce cup, maybe even up to a tablespoon. And some of the teas that I have really large leaves call for about 2 tablespoons per cup. So you'll use the ratio based on what you would normally use to brew that tea. So let me clean up our area, get rid of some ancillary items, and then be right back to brew our tea. So today we're going to make a quart of black iced tea. So a quart is 4 cups, which means that we need 4 teaspoons. And I'm using an English breakfast blend from Mountain Rose Herbs. It's just a basic black tea blend for your average iced tea. It allows you to do a lot of things too that you can enhance the flavor, such as with this one that I made, I put orange slices in it. It makes for a great base to then be able to drink plain or enhance. Now, I could put my 4 teaspoons directly into this quart, fill it up with the hot water, and let it brew. But actually, I prefer to steep it in a smaller vessel at a higher strength, and then add cool water to the jar to help bring that temperature down more quickly. If I make it directly in here and it's just hot, it takes a long time to cool off. I don't want to put a hot jar into a fridge where it's going to take a lot of energy to cool it. So I prefer to make my tea in the smaller vessel and then strain it into the larger vessel and then fill the rest up with cool water, and that will help cool it down a lot more quickly. It also lets me enjoy it more quickly. So I have boiling water because, again, the black tea is steeped at boiling temperature or close to boiling temperature water, depending on the black tea that you're using. I'm going to fill that up, put a lid on, and let it steep for about 5 minutes, which is that maximum time frame, to make sure that it's nice and strong to be then watered down some. We'll be right back to strain out our tea into our quart jar. So it's been about 5 minutes, so we can take this out. And you'll notice that the tea is pretty dark, and that's what you want, is a nice strong tea. Now I already went ahead and put the cool water into this jar. It doesn't matter whether you put it in ahead of time or after the fact. And I'm just going to pour this in. And now I have a jar of iced tea ready to enjoy. If you want to add any sweetener ahead of time, now would be a good time because it is warm, so it will help dissolve more easily, something like a natural sweetener such as honey. And you can also add some fruit slices or other types of enhancements that you want to put in your tea to give it a little extra pizzazz. This is still a little warm, so you want to let it cool off just a little bit before putting it in the fridge, or you can have a glass with some ice in it and pour it right in over top some ice and cool it down quickly to enjoy right away. Now I wanted to give another tip for making iced tea. First of all, these leaves may still have some tea in them, so it might be worth boiling some more water, re-steeping even just half of this pint jar, and then extracting even more tea from these leaves rather than wasting them. The other trick that I do, which is what I did with this particular jar, is I made green tea this morning and I only made 2 cups from it, and sometimes I steep that up to 3 and 4 times. And so I ended up going ahead and steeping another cup of tea and then turning it into green iced tea. I threw some strawberries in for effect just to give it a little flavor, popped it in the fridge, and now I have easy iced tea, and I've conserved the leaves, not allowing them to just go to waste, extra flavor that might be lingering in there, but by using those leaves to the fullest extent that I can. So, what is your preferred flavor of iced tea? And do you make it using a hot brewed method or another method, which we'll be studying coming up in our future episodes here at Let's Talk Tea. So I look forward to hearing from you. If you're interested in more episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out. And I hope that I see you at our standing reservation every Wednesday right here at Rebecca's Tea Cozy. Until then, be blessed with a cup of iced tea.